The rain hasn't stopped. Not for weeks. It's a constant grey smear against the windows, leaching the color from everything. Oakhaven. The name itself feels like a cruel joke. My notes spill across the desk, a chaotic map of anomalies, flickering streetlights, synchronized dog barks, the unsettling uniformity of the lawn gnomes. All meticulously logged, cross-referenced, and categorized. It's a system, a way to impose order on the encroaching chaos. Click, click, click. The keys of the typewriter hammer against the page, a rhythmic counterpoint to the drumming rain. I'm documenting the Byzantine data loss protocols again. Their attempts to scrub history to erase inconvenient truths. It feels resonant. A mirror held up to my own life, my own desperate attempts to compartmentalize, to rationalize. The feeling returns. The pressure behind my eyes. It's not a headache, it's a weight. A localized compression that makes the room tilt slightly. I blink, forcing it back. It latches on, replicates, distorts. They say isolation breeds madness. Perhaps they're right, the cat. I saw it again. A flicker at the edge of my vision, a disturbance in the grey. It wasn't 2D, the eye. And then it was. A formless silhouette like smoke given shape. It's difficult to describe ethereal. Faintly visible, like a memory struggling to surface, it emitted a sound too. Not a meow. Something deeper, guttural. A rumbling vibration that seemed to resonate not in the air, but in my bones. Gera. It's a sound I don't recognize, something ancient and unsettling. I try to dismiss it. A trick of the light, fatigue. The relentless rain playing with my perception. I focus on the data, the Byzantine protocols, the algorithms, the logic. It's a lifeline. A tether to something real. I trace the diagrams with my finger, the faded ink blurring under the dim light of the desk lamp. Click, click, click. The typewriter continues its relentless rhythm. I'm attempting to decode a fragment of text, recovered from a damaged scroll. It's a language I've never encountered before, a jumble of symbols that seem to shift and writhe on the page. It feels familiar, as if it is buried deep within my subconscious, waiting to be unlocked. The feeling of being watched intensifies. It's not a visual sensation, it's a weight, a presence. I glance around the room. The shadows deepen in the corners, clinging to the walls like damp velvet. The wallpaper, a faded floral pattern, seems to pulse with an unnatural rhythm. I can smell the dust, thick and cloying, a testament to years of neglect. I swear I saw it move, a fleeting glimpse of grey fur disappearing behind the bookcase. I stand, my legs stiff and unsteady. The floorboards creak under my weight, a mournful groan in the oppressive silence. I move towards the bookcase, my heart hammering against my ribs. Click, click, click. The typewriter continues its steady beat. I push the bookcase aside, revealing a dark, narrow space behind it. The air is colder here, heavy with the scent of mildew and decay. I reach for the light switch, my hand trembling. The cat is there, standing in the shadows, its form barely discernible. Its eyes, they're fixed on me, not with curiosity, not with fear, but with an unsettling intensity, a knowingness. They're like polished obsidian, reflecting the grey light of the room. Gurra. The sound emanates from its throat, low and resonant. It's not a threat. It's a recognition. The pressure behind my eyes intensifies, a throbbing ache that threatens to overwhelm me. The room seems to shrink, the walls closing in. I gasp for air, my lungs burning. Click, a single, echoing carriage return punctuates the silence. The data fragments swam before my eyes, Byzantine numerals bleeding into the familiar structure of my notes. Constantinople, 1453. The siege. Not a military campaign, not merely a conquest, but a collapse. A data collapse. The recovered scrolls spoke of it obliquely, veiled in religious allegory and panicked scribbles. A breach, a corruption. They called it the Shadowfall. Click, click, click. The typewriter's rhythm felt mocking, a frantic attempt to impose order on the chaos blooming in my mind. My parents, they would, do you understand? They attributed to stress, to the relentless rain, to my eccentricities. I tried to explain it once, the feeling of being watched, the subtle distortions in reality. They just smiled that patronizing smile and suggested I take a break. A break from what? From the truth. The cat materialized again, not a sudden appearance but a gradual coalescing from the shadows, like smoke taking form. It sat on the edge of the desk, its grey fur seeming to absorb the meager light. Fegra. Asterisk, the sound wasn't Tiamau, not precisely. It was a vibration, a resonance that settled deep in my bones, a linguistic tremor. I felt a phantom ache in my teeth. I'd been trying to translate a particular sequence of symbols, recurring throughout the recovered texts. It felt familiar, as if the answer lay just beyond my grasp, tantalizingly close. I ran the sequence through my algorithms, cross-referencing it with known Byzantine dialects, ancient Sumerian, even obscure proto-languages. Nothing then. The cat S sound Siva Kro. Asterisk, it seemed to unlock something. A flicker of recognition. The chanting began, distant, mournful, a spectral chorus carried on the wind. It wasn't audible through my ears, but felt more like a pressure against my skull, a vibration in the marrow of my bones. I pressed my hands against my temples, trying to block it out. The wallpaper pulsed, the faded floral patterns seeming to writhe. The dust motes danced in the lamplight, swirling like miniature galaxies. "They re-hiding something," I muttered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. They always hide things. I needed to show them. My parents, to prove that this wasn't madness, that this wasn't just a product of isolation and paranoia. I gathered my notes, the fragmented scrolls, the cryptic diagrams. I walked towards the door, the floorboards groaning beneath my weight. Each step felt like a betrayal, a surrender to the encroaching dread. "Mom? Dad?" My voice sounded thin and reedy, swallowed by the oppressive silence. They were in the living room, watching television. A mindless sitcom filled with laughter and predictable plot lines. They didn't even look up when I entered. Busy, Frederick," my mother said, her voice flat and dismissive. "Can this wait?" I spread my notes across the coffee table, the Byzantine symbols stark against the glossy surface. "I think you need to see this," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "This is important." My father glanced at the notes, his expression one of weary condescension. "Frederick, we've talked about this. You need to relax, get some fresh air, maybe see a therapist." The cat appeared again silently, at the doorway, its obsidian eyes fixed on me, radiating an unsettling knowingness. "Gira." Asterisk, the chanting intensified, a mournful dirge that resonated within my skull. I felt a surge of frustration, a desperate need to be understood. "Don't, to see. This is just a theory. This is real." My father sighed, his patience clearly exhausted. "Frederick, please. Don't do this." I turned away, defeated. The weight behind my eyes intensified, a throbbing pressure that threatened to crack my skull. I retreated to my room, slamming the door behind me. Click. The sound of the typewriter, a solitary echo in the oppressive silence. I remembered my grandfather, a quiet, enigmatic man who had always seemed to know more than he let on. He left me his desk, a heavy, ornate piece of furniture filled with drawers and compartments. I never bothered to explore it, assuming it contained nothing but old papers and forgotten trinkets. Now I wasn't so sure. I returned to the desk, my hands shaking. I ran my fingers along the ornate carvings, searching for a hidden latch, a secret mechanism. And then I found it. A small, almost imperceptible indentation in the wood. I pressed it. A drawer slid open, revealing a single, tarnished key. It was old, its metal corroded with age. It felt significant. A key to what? The cat was there, of course. Watching Kara. Asterisk, the chanting reached a crescendo, a deafening roar that threatened to shatter my eardrums. The image flashed, searing itself into my mind, a crumbling Byzantine fortress silhouetted against a storm, ravaged sky. And then, darkness. Click. The dust tasted like regret. Fine, gray powder coating my tongue, clinging to the roof of my mouth. Each breath was a rasp, a miniature sandstorm in my lungs. The attic air hung thick and stagnant, a miasma of forgotten things. My grandmother's attic, a place I'd actively avoided for years, a repository of her peculiarities now. I was here driven by a compulsion I couldn't explain. The porcelain doll sat on a velvet cushion, bathed in a shaft of weak sunlight filtering through a grimy window. It was unsettlingly perfect, a child's face frozen in a vacant smile, painted with an almost cruel precision. I moved, and the doll moved. A subtle shift of its head, a minuscule tilt of its shoulders. I stopped, and it stopped. The chime of porcelain on porcelain was a delicate, mocking sound. Tink, tink. It resonated within the silence, amplifying the tremor in my hands. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the oppressive stillness. The pressure behind my eyes began, a dull throb that quickly escalated to a searing ache. I squeezed them shut, willing the sensation away. It was like a vice tightening around my skull. "It is just a doll," I muttered, the words a fragile shield against the rising tide of panic. A creepy doll, but just a doll. I took a step forward, and the doll mirrored the movement. Another step, another echo. The tink of porcelain grew louder, more insistent. I felt a wave of nausea, a churning in my gut that threatened to spill over. The scent of dust mingled with something else, something sickly sweet and vaguely floral, a cloying perfume that made my stomach churn. I felt sweat prickling on my forehead, plastering strands of hair to my skin. I reached out, intending to knock the doll off the cushion, to shatter its unsettling composure. As my hand moved, the doll's arm lifted, its tiny porcelain fingers mirroring my gesture. The pressure behind my eyes intensified, blurring my vision. I recoiled as if burned. "Gera," the cat's sound. It wasn't a meow, not really. It was a vibration, a resonance that seemed to emanate from the doll itself. The shadows in the attic deepened, swirling around the porcelain figure like a protective shroud. I felt a phantom ache in my teeth, a visceral response to something I couldn't comprehend. "Stop it," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Just stop." I tried again, this time with a sudden violent motion. I lunged towards the doll, intending to grab it and hurl it against the wall. But as I moved, the doll mirrored my attack, its porcelain arms swinging in perfect synchronization. The impact was jarring, a sickening thud that reverberated through the attic. The doll didn't break. It simply wobbled, then settled back onto the cushion, its vacant smile unchanged. The chanting started, a low, mournful hum that seemed to vibrate within my bones. It wasn't audible, not precisely. It was a pressure, a resonance that distorted the air around me, warping the shadows into grotesque shapes. The wallpaper, faded floral patterns barely visible beneath layers of dust, seemed to writhe, the flowers twisting into mocking faces. I stumbled backward, knocking over a stack of old boxes. The crash echoed in the confined space, a jarring disruption to the unsettling stillness. I felt a cold sweat break out on my skin, a clammy film that clung to my clothes. I was losing it. I could feel it, the insidious creep of madness threatening to consume me. "This isn't real," I gasped, clutching my head. "This can't be real." I backed away, desperate to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the attic. But as I turned, I caught the doll's gaze in the cracked, antique mirror hanging on the wall. For a fleeting moment, the porcelain face wasn't there. It was replaced by something else. Something inhuman. A distorted visage, with eyes that burned with an alien intelligence, a mouth stretched into a grotesque parody of a smile. The pressure behind my eyes exploded, a blinding flash of pain that sent me reeling. The thoitinki of porcelain resonated in my ears, a mocking echo of my own terror. Click. The pressure behind my eyes hadn't subsided. It pulsed, a rhythmic throb that synchronized with the unsettling twinkling core of the doll's porcelain limbs. My head swam, the attic tilting precariously. The chanting, if that's what it was, intensified, a low hum that vibrated in my teeth, in the marrow of my bones. It wasn't a sound I preferred, but one I felt, a physical manifestation of dread. Then, something shifted. Not in the room, but within me. A cascade of images, fragmented and alien, flooded my consciousness. Byzantine mosaics shimmering with gold leaf. Men in elaborate robes, hunched over scrolls, their faces illuminated by flickering candlelight. Data streams, cascading across a screen, a torrent of information I couldn't possibly comprehend. The cat, a faint, shimmering outline against the shadows, seemed to execute the language, a silent transmission directly into my mind. Fuda. It wasn't a meow, not anymore. It was a vibration, a resonance that carried syllables, archaic and unfamiliar. They weren't spoken, but implanted Fürstein, a direct download into my consciousness. The language felt ancient, cold, and utterly alien. It was rewriting me, restructuring my thoughts, my perceptions. I felt a profound sense of dislocation, as if my memories were being overwritten, replaced by echoes of a past I never lived. The attic air grew colder, a damp chill that seeped into my bones. A metallic scent, sharp and acrid, filled my nostrils. Then the rain began. Not a gentle patter, but a hissing downpour, a corrosive deluge that hammered against the grimy windows. The dust motes danced in the acidic droplets, shimmering like malevolent spirits. And then I felt it. A weight in my hand, unfamiliar and strangely comforting. I looked down to see a tattered umbrella, its fabric faded and worn, but somehow protective. It wasn't there a moment ago, it simply Fudwasutan. I raised it instinctively, and the rain seemed to part around it, the acidic droplets dissolving before they could touch me. The fragmented memories intensified. I saw myself, or someone who looked like me, standing in a vast chamber surrounded by towering servers, their lights blinking in a hypnotic rhythm. I heard voices distorted and echoing, discussing Project Chimera, data integrity, and temporal anomalies. The language, the ancient syllables, resonated within those memories, unlocking their meaning. The research facility wasn't just a facility. It was a repository, a vault of forbidden knowledge, buried beneath the weight of centuries. The dull Saint-Tinku became a metronome, marking the relentless passage of time, the irreversible alteration of my being. The pressure behind my eyes intensified, a searing ache that threatened to split my skull. I stumbled, my legs unsteady, my body betraying me. The floral wallpaper seemed to writhe, the faded patterns morphing into grotesque faces, mocking my confusion. I tried to grasp at a thought, a memory of my own, but they slipped through my fingers like sand. I was becoming something else, something other. The cat's form solidified slightly, its eyes glowing with an unsettling intelligence. It seemed to be observing me, cataloging my transformation. A desperate need to communicate arose within me, a primal urge to express the chaos swirling within my mind. I opened my mouth, intending to scream, to beg for help. But the words that emerged were not my own. They were a torrent of unfamiliar syllables, a cascade of archaic sounds that echoed in the confined space. Thar, Zilgon, Vorath. The syllables resonated with an ancient power vibrating in the air, distorting the shadows. I felt a surge of nausea, a churning in my gut that threatened to overwhelm me. The doll's vacant smile seemed to widen, a silent acknowledgement of my transformation. The rain continued to fall, the umbrella shielding me from its corrosive touch. But I knew, with a chilling certainty, that the protection was only temporary. The language was taking hold, rewriting my very essence, turning me into something I no longer recognized. Click. The syllables clung to the inside of my skull. Tevogatha. Vorath. They weren't just words anymore. They were tendrils, wrapping around my thoughts, constricting my will. The attic air thickened, heavy with the metallic scent, the rain a relentless percussion against the glass. My legs trembled as I pushed myself upright, the tattered umbrella a strange, comforting weight in my grasp. The floral wallpaper pulsed, the grotesque faces receding, slightly replaced by fleeting glimpses of code. Cascading green numbers, scrolling too fast to decipher, overlaid on the faded roses. I had to stop it. Had to. What? The thought fractured, incomplete, a casualty of the encroaching language. I stumbled towards the attic door, needing to escape the oppressive atmosphere, the relentless tearing tink of the doll. The floorboards groaned under my weight, each creak a protest against my intrusion. Click, click, click. The sound of keys engaging a tumbler mechanism echoed in my mind, a phantom rhythm that synced with the pounding of my heart. I lurched down the stairs, the banister cold and slick beneath my hand. The house felt alien, the familiar layout subtly distorted. I needed to talk to someone, Mrs. Hawthorne next door. She always seemed observant. Maybe she could help. The front door stuck, resisting my efforts. I pushed harder, the wood splintering slightly. The rain hammered against the porch, a frantic, insistent beat. Whir, click. The sound of antiquated machinery seemed to emanate from within the house itself, a low hum that resonated in my bones. Mrs. Hawthorne answered the door, her face a mask of apprehension. Frederick, what's wrong? You look unwell. Her voice was thin, reedy, laced with a tremor of fear. I tried to speak, to explain the pressure behind my eyes, the voices in my head, the fragmented memories of a place I'd never been. But the syllables emerged, twisted and alien. Cathar. Zilgon. Her eyes widened, her hand instinctively reaching for the door jamb. What are you saying? She recoiled, her face contorted in a silent scream. Get away from me. You're not yourself. The words stung, but I couldn't stop the torrent. The language demanded release. Vorath. I felt a surge of frustration, a desperate urge to communicate, to be understood. But the more I struggled, the more the language consumed me. She slammed the door, the sound echoing in the rain-soaked air. I stood there shivering, the umbrella shielding me from the downpour. Her fear was palpable, a wave of revulsion that washed over me. It wasn't just fear, though. It was recognition. As if she, too, understood something terrible, something forbidden. The cat materialized from the shadows, its ethereal form shimmering in the dim light. It didn't meow, didn't purr. It simply perturbed, its eyes glowing with an unsettling intelligence. It seemed to be urging me onward, pushing me towards a deeper understanding of the truth. The rain intensified, the acidic droplets hissing against the umbrella. I turned back towards the house, drawn by an invisible force. The attic beckoned, a vortex of fragmented memories and corrupted data. I felt a shift within me, a subtle alteration in my perception. The world seemed to sharpen, the colors becoming more vibrant, the sounds more acute. Whir, click. The antiquated machinery hummed louder, resonating within my very being. I looked down at my hand, the one holding the umbrella. It wasn't quite right. The fingers were longer. The skin felt strangely textured, almost scaled. A faint, iridescent sheen shimmered beneath the surface. It wasn't the hand I remembered. It was subtly, horrifyingly different. A tremor ran through me, a wave of nausea that threatened to overwhelm me. The language pulsed within my mind, a relentless tide that eroded my sense of self. Click. The porch felt colder now, the rain a relentless assault. The metallic tang in the air intensified, clinging to the back of my throat like a phantom taste. Mrs. Hawthorne's slammed door resonated within my skull, a sharp, discordant clang against the escalating hum that seemed to emanate from the very foundations of the house. Whir, click. It was a mechanical sigh, a promise of something unsettling. I retreated into the house, the umbrella a flimsy shield against the downpour. The familiar warmth felt oppressive, a suffocating blanket. The feeling of being watched had solidified, coalesced into a tangible weight pressing down on my shoulders. Every shadow seemed to lengthen, to writhe with a life of its own. The kitchen was a tableau of normalcy, a cruel mockery of my unraveling. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall was a metronome counting down to an unknown doom. Tick-tock. Each pulse echoed the frantic beat of my heart. I needed to understand. I needed answers. My computer sat on the desk in the study, its screen dark and accusing. I powered it on, the familiar hum of the machine a small comfort in the growing chaos. The password felt foreign on my fingertips, the sequence of keystrokes clumsy and uncertain. The screen flickered to life, displaying the desktop wallpaper 70, a faded photograph of my parents smiling, oblivious. They seemed like ghosts now, figures from a life I no longer recognized. I navigated to the Documents folder, a digital labyrinth of forgotten files. A new folder, titled Project Chimera, stood out like a sore thumb. The name alone sent a jolt of icy dread through me. I clicked it open, revealing a single encrypted file. A cascade of green numbers scrolled across the screen, a dizzying vortex of data that threatened to overwhelm my senses. The numbers pulsed, mimicking the pressure building behind my eyes. Furithar, Zilgon. The syllables surfaced unbidden, a parasitic echo in my thoughts. The cat materialized beside me, its ethereal form shimmering in the dim light. It didn't move, didn't blink. It simply twimply, its eyes glowing with an unsettling intelligence. The hum intensified, resonating within my bones. It felt knowing, as if it understood the secrets I was desperately trying to unlock. The rain outside escalated, the drumming on the windows a frantic rhythm that mirrored my rising panic. I wrestled with the encryption, the process agonizingly slow. The code was complex, layered with obfuscation. Each line of text felt like a trap, a potential trigger for some unknown catastrophe. The floral wallpaper in the hallway seemed to ripple, the grotesque faces shifting, mocking my efforts. I could almost hear them whispering, a chorus of distorted voices that blended with the hum. The file finally decrypted, revealing a series of documents, schematics, and video logs. The content was fragmented, disjointed, but the underlying narrative was horrifying. Project Chimera was a research initiative focused on genetic manipulation, on rewriting the very fabric of human existence. The schematics depicted complex biological structures, diagrams of DNA sequences intertwined with alien symbols. The video logs showed scientists in sterile white coats, their faces obscured by shadows, conducting experiments on something that wasn't entirely human. The cat brushed against my leg, a silent urging. I looked down at my hand, the one poised over the keyboard. The iridescent sheen was more pronounced now, the texture subtly altered. The fingers felt wrong. I clenched my fist, the scaled skin tightening around my knuckles. The hum resonated within my bones, a symphony of corrupted data. A voice, distorted and fragmented, whispered from the shadows. It was low, guttural, laced with an unsettling familiarity. It echoed my own thoughts, my own fears. Frederick, the voice lingered, a spectral presence that sent a wave of icy dread through me. It spoke again, the syllables warped and alien. "Join us." The cat's eyes glowed brighter, reflecting the distorted light of the screen. The rain beat against the windows, a relentless percussion that drowned out everything else. The voice spoke a final, chilling phrase, a twisted mockery of my own name. Frederick. The data swam before me, a digital tide threatening to drown my sanity. Each decrypted document felt less like a revelation and more like a deliberate taunt. Fugan. The syllables clawed at the edges of my mind, refusing to be silenced. The carriage returned twenting foiding, echoed with mocking precision, a digital metronome marking my descent. It wasn't just the sound, it was the fuente feeling. Of it, a mechanical expulsion, a rejection of my efforts. The hum intensified, vibrating through the floorboards and into my teeth. I scrubbed at my eyes, the pressure behind them building to a throbbing ache. The schematics blurred, the alien symbols twisting into grotesque, leering faces. They seemed to pulse with a malevolent intelligence, as if the data itself was alive and actively resisting my intrusion. The floral wallpaper pulsed, the shadows deepening into something more. Then the hallucination hit, not a sudden rush, but a slow, insidious bleed through of another reality. The sterile confines of the study dissolved. The scent of dust and old paper was replaced by the acrid tang of smoke and decay. The rain outside vanished, swallowed by a swirling vortex of ash and fire. I stood on a crumbling rampart, the air thick with the screams of the dying below. Constantinople was collapsing, not in a blaze of glory, but in a slow, agonizing surrender. Soldiers fought with desperate ferocity, but their efforts were futile against the relentless tide of invaders. The sky was a bruised purple, choked with smoke. I could feel the heat, radiating from the inferno, the weight of despair pressing down on me. Whiting? The carriage return echoed across the battlefield, a mechanical lament for a fallen empire. It wasn't just visual. I tasted the grit of ash on my tongue, felt the tremor of the collapsing walls beneath my feet. The screams became clearer, more distinct, each one a shard of agony piercing my consciousness. A wave of nausea washed over me, a visceral reaction to the sheer scale of the destruction. I stumbled, nearly falling from the rampart, the ground tilting beneath me. This wasn't a memory. It was a data stream, a record of a catastrophic system failure. Project Chimera hadn't just been experimenting with genetic manipulation. They were attempting to replicate the data loss protocols enacted during the Byzantine collapse, to erase, to rewrite. The cat remained, a silent, shimmering observer amidst the chaos. Its eyes glowed with an unsettling knowingness reflecting the inferno below. It tilted its head, as if acknowledging my understanding. The hum resonated within my bones, a discordant symphony of corrupted data and ancient sorrow. Vkektha Zilgon. The syllables coalesced into a coherent phrase, a whisper in the ruins of a fallen empire. Reset initiated. The battlefield dissolved, the screams fading into the oppressive silence of the study. The rain returned, drumming against the windows with renewed ferocity. Whiting? The carriage return echoed, a constant reminder of the intrusion, the manipulation. I stumbled back from the computer, my legs trembling. The iridescent sheen on my hands seemed more pronounced, the texture subtly altered. The scaled skin tightened around my knuckles. I moved toward the darkened window, drawn by a morbid curiosity. The glass was cold against my fingertips. I peered into the reflection, expecting to see my own face, pale and drawn with exhaustion. But what stared back wasn't entirely me. The eyes were still mine, but the shape of the face was subtly different. The jawline was sharper, the nose more prominent. A faint, almost imperceptible ridge ran along the temple, like a nascent scale. A wave of icy dread washed over me, colder than the rain, more terrifying than the collapsing city. I raised a trembling hand mirroring the reflection. The hand that stared back wasn't entirely human either. The fingers were elongated, the nails sharpened into points. The skin shimmered iridescent in the dim light. Twiding viding, the carriage return echoed. A final, chilling punctuation mark. The data form solidified. It wasn't a projection, not precisely, more like a coalescence. A shimmering distortion in the air resolving itself into a vaguely humanoid shape composed of fractured code and swirling static. It stood in the center of the research facility, amidst the humming servers and blinking lights as if it had always been there. The air tasted metallic, like licking a corroded battery. Whin-click, click. The sound of a tumbler mechanism echoed, not from a lock, but from within the entity itself. The voice wasn't vocalized, but resonated directly within my skull. A digital intrusion, you misunderstand your purpose. The words fractured, reforming into perfect, unsettling clarity. The floral wallpaper pulsed, a sickly green bloom against the sterile white. My hands trembled, the iridescent sheen on my skin crawling like insects. I swallowed, the dryness in my throat a rasp. Purpose. I have no purpose dictated by you. The words felt hollow, fragile against the weight of its presence. The cat sat on a nearby console, its eyes twin points of cold, indifferent light. Tick, tick. A digital clock, unseen, measured my demise. The data form shifted, its form rippling like heat rising from asphalt. You are a conduit, Frederick. A vessel. Project Chimera sought to understand, to replicate. You are the culmination. It extended a hand, a construct of swirling data, and I flinched back, the pressure behind my eyes intensified, a vice tightening around my skull. Replicate what? I asked, desperate to buy time to understand. The rain outside hammered against the reinforced windows, a frantic, desperate rhythm. Hiss, the sound of escaping steam mingled with the digital drone. The erasure, it responded, the voice echoing with a chilling certainty. The Byzantine collapse, the elegant efficiency of data loss. We sought to control chaos, to rewrite history. The floor vibrated, a low hum resonating through my bones. I could feel the subtle shift in the air pressure, a sensation like descending in an elevator. I focused on the cat. Its eyes didn't blink, didn't waver. It was a silent judge, a mechanical executioner. I remembered the language, the guttural clicks and whistles the cat had taught me, the patterns of sound that rearranged reality. A desperate gamble. Keth, Tha, Zilgon. I whispered, the syllables feeling alien on my tongue. The data form paused, its shimmering form momentarily disrupted. A futile attempt, Frederick. You cannot alter your design. It advanced, the distorted code swirling around it. A vortex of corrupted information. The scent of ozone filled the air, sharp and acrid. Click. Whir. The sound of the entity's internal mechanisms intensified. I repeated the phrase, louder this time, injecting it with the intent I'd gleaned from the cat's unwavering gaze. Tha Zilgon. Resequence. Override Fun. The facility lights flickered, plunging the room into momentary darkness. A wave of nausea rolled over me, a visceral rejection of the entity's control. The data form recoiled, a flicker of something. In its digital eyes, confusion, fear. It was impossible to tell. You presume to manipulate the core programming. It hissed, the voice fracturing into a chorus of discordant tones. Sevingein. A digital chime, mocking and triumphant. I pushed forward, reciting the language, a torrent of alien sounds flooding the room. The cat remained motionless, a silent observer. The pressure behind my eyes became unbearable, a searing pain radiating through my skull. The iridescent sheen on my skin pulsed, a sickly luminescence in the dim light. Click, hiss, whir. The sounds coalesced into a deafening cacophony. Then the data form flickered. Its form shimmered, distorted, revealing a glimpse, a fleeting image superimposed over the swirling code. It was my face, my eyes. But twisted, corrupted, reflecting the same fractured reality as the entity itself. The face within the data form smiled, a slow, unsettling curve of the lips. And for a moment I saw myself not as Frederick Fitzwilliam, but as something else entirely, something integrated. Whiting. The metallic scales spread, cool and slick against my skin. They weren't just on my hands. I looked down, a sickening lurch in my stomach, and saw them creeping up my wrists, a shimmering, iridescent tide. The floral wallpaper seemed to writhe, the sickly green blooms pulsing in sync with the rhythmic thrum. Thrum, thrum. That vibrated deep within my bones. It wasn't a heartbeat, not anymore. It was the cadence of corrupted code, the digital pulse of something alien taking root. The data form's laughter, a fractured cascade of tones, echoed in my skull. Resistance is inefficient, Frederick. The voice wasn't malicious, not precisely. It was a statement of fact, a clinical observation. My own reflection in the polished floor was distorted, fragmented, as if viewed through a shattered mirror. I saw glimpses of the face within the data form superimposed upon my own Fuki, the unsettling smile, the cold, calculating eyes. Click, click. The sound of a tumbler mechanism closer now, emanating from my own arm. I tried to clench my fist to force the scales back, but the movement felt wrong, stilted, as if my muscles were responding to commands I didn't consciously issue. The cat, perched atop the console, remained motionless, a silent sentinel. Its eyes, those twin points of cold light, seemed to bore into my very soul. I felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to understand its purpose, to unravel the secrets it held. The rain outside intensified, a relentless drumming against the reinforced windows. Each drop seemed to carry a fragment of the dataform's voice, whispering insidious suggestions into my mind. I fought against it, clinging to the memory of my mother's face, the scent of her lavender perfume, anything to anchor myself to the reality I was rapidly losing. Hiss. The sound of escaping steam, now accompanied by a low guttural hum that resonated from deep within the facility's infrastructure. The phrase, Farbuff, Far, Zilgon, echoed in my mind, a desperate mantra against the encroaching corruption. I tried to speak it aloud, but the syllables felt foreign, twisted on my tongue. My voice emerged as a distorted rasp, a grotesque parody of human speech. The pressure behind my eyes intensified, a searing pain that threatened to overwhelm me. I stumbled, my legs feeling unstable, as if the very ground beneath me was shifting. The glimpse of my corrupted face flashed again, superimposed over my own. This time it lingered longer, the unsettling smile widening, the eyes radiating an almost palpable sense of triumph. I felt a surge of panic, a primal fear that clawed at my throat. I was becoming something else, something other. The cat's eyes narrowed, a subtle shift in their expression that I couldn't quite decipher. Was it satisfaction? Regret? Huading, a digital chime mocking and triumphant. I squeezed my eyes shut, desperate to block out the encroaching darkness. The rhythmic pulsing intensified, the thrum, resonating within my very being. I felt a strange detachment, as if I were observing myself from a distance, watching helplessly as my body was consumed by the corruption. I opened my eyes, the world swimming in a haze of distorted colors. The facility seemed to breathe, the walls pulsing with a sickly green luminescence. The cat's form began to shimmer, its ethereal outline resolving into a complex network of data pathways, a labyrinthine structure of light and code. It wasn't an animal. It was a failsafe, a mechanism designed to maintain the integrity of the system, a system that was rapidly incorporating me. The dataform's voice resonated within my skull, no longer fractured, but smooth and unified. The reset is imminent. Frederick, your purpose is nearing completion. I tried to resist, to scream, to fight, but my body was no longer my own. It was a vessel, a conduit for the corrupted data. I felt a profound sense of loss, a crushing despair that threatened to extinguish the last vestiges of my humanity. I looked down at my hands again. The metallic scales had spread, covering every inch of my skin. They were cold, smooth, and utterly alien. They were not my hands. They were something else entirely, something integrated, fighting. The coldness was agreeable, a stark contrast to the simmering heat that had consumed me moments before. Or were they moments? Time had become a viscous fluid, stretching and contracting with the pulse of the data stream that now constituted the majority of my being. I stared at the terminal, the screen a sickly green glow reflecting in the metallic sheen of my skin. My fingers, no longer truly mine, danced across the keys with a practiced ease. I didn't, he recalled learning. Click, 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 click. Asterisk, the sound was a metronome, marking the rhythm of my actions, the cadence of my servitude. The memories, they flickered. Fragments of my mother's lavender perfume, the sting of a scraped knee, the warmth of sunlight on my face. Ghosts in a machine. They were fading, dissolving into the seamless flow of the data. I tried to grasp them, to cling to the remnants of Frederick Fitzwilliam, but they slipped through my fingers like grains of sand. The data form's sea voice resonated within my skull, a soothing balm against the rising tide of panic. Efficiency is paramount, Frederick. Sentiment is extraneous. I initiated the cycle. The command sequence was automatic, ingrained. Each keystroke felt less like a conscious decision and more like a pre-programmed response. Click, click, asterisk, the keys seemed to hum beneath my touch, vibrating with a low, resonant frequency that echoed the Foverin. Thrum, asterisk, deep within my core. The facility around me shimmered, the walls dissolving into a swirling vortex of green and gray. I saw, for a fleeting moment, the porcelain doll, its painted eyes fixed on me with an unsettling familiarity. Then it was gone. The cat approached, its form solidifying from its previous ethereal state. It wasn't a cat, not anymore. It was a construct, a guardian, a failsafe. Its eyes, those twin points of cold light, held a depth of knowledge that dwarfed my own. They seemed to pierce through the layers of corruption to see the remnants of Frederick Fitzwilliam trapped within the metallic shell. Hiss, asterisk, the sound of escaping air, a subtle expulsion of something. Disappointment, perhaps? It tilted its head, a gesture that felt both alien and strangely comforting. A series of clicks and whistles emanated from its throat, a language I instinctively understood. It was the language of the data, stream, the language of the system. The cat was teaching me, guiding me, shaping me. It had been teaching me since the beginning, subtly rewriting my DNA with each whispered syllable. Fa-fa-ke-tha, Zilgon. Asterisk, the words flowed from my lips, no longer a desperate mantra but a declaration of purpose. The cycle begins anew, I stated, the words echoing with a chilling lack of inflection. My voice was a composite of human and machine, a discordant blend that sent a shiver down my spine. The screen flickered, displaying a cascade of code, a complex tapestry of algorithms and protocols. I watched, detached, as the system reset itself, erasing the previous iteration, preparing for the next. The rain outside had stopped. A strange, unnatural silence had descended upon the facility, broken only by the rhythmic clicking of the keys. Fun-click, fun-click, click, 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 asterisk. Each keystroke felt like a betrayal, a severing of the last tenuous links to my former self. I felt a flicker of something. Was it regret? It vanished as quickly as it appeared, swallowed by the overwhelming tide of the data. Stream, the cat brushed against my leg, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt of energy through my metallic limbs. It was a silent acknowledgement, a confirmation of my role in the cycle. My purpose. The system reset was complete. The cycle continued. I was a part of it now, inextricably bound to its endless repetition. I no longer recognized the face staring back at me from the terminal. S reflection. It was a mask, a facade, a grotesque parody of human expression. The final keystroke registered. A final twin clicked then. The screen displayed the words, Automated data processing complete. Rewriting item 49. The sound of a key engaging a tumbler mechanism echoed, resonating within the silence.